Chinese President Xi Jinping has rolled out the red carpet for Prime Minister Narendra Modi. This is being described as a historic visit by the Chinese media. The first ever informal summit between two major leaders of the world. Top government sources have told India today that micro issues like the 73-day-long Doklam standoff will not be discussed in this summit, but a broader view to address the boundary issue between India and China is likely to be discussed. There will be no outcome document, no MOU, no memorandum of undertaking, but both Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Chinese President Xi Jinping will talk about their view of their country, the region and the world. This will be a free, frank and fearless discussion, not fettered by laid out agenda. They will share their opinion about what they expect the India-China relationship to be so that it can be taken forward. Now, before leaving for Wuhan, Prime Minister Narendra Modi tweeted that President Xi and he will exchange views on a range of issues of bilateral and global importance. He said, and I quote, "We will discuss our respective visions and priorities for national development, especially in the context of current and future international situation. We will review the developments in the India-China relations from a strategic and long-term perspective," unquote. So the two leaders, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Chinese President Xi Jinping, will take a boat ride in the East Lake in Wuhan. The two will also walk by the lake. But this first ever informal summit with no declared agenda is more than just a photo op between India and China. There are great expectations on forward movement on issues that have troubled this relationship and also their worldview. The question is, can the tiger and the dragon coexist and build a strong relationship in one Asia? India Today's Anand Krishnan is in Wuhan and he sent us this report. President Xi Jinping is laying out the red carpet for Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Wuhan, the city known as China's happiest city with its tree-lined streets and bicycle lanes, is putting on a show for the Indian Prime Minister. For 2 days, Modi and Xi will hold a first-of-its-kind informal summit as they stroll by a lake and share a boat ride.
This informal summit is a new kind of diplomacy by Xi Jinping. It also shows that China is reaching out to India at a time when it is unnerved by what the United States under Donald Trump has been doing by targeting China and launching a trade war. It also harks back to the days of Mao, when personal diplomacy was used. For instance, when Mao hosted Richard Nixon at another lakeside villa, not here in Wuhan but in Hangzhou.
时间腾讯新闻已经报道了，然后我们的习大大国家主席，然后跟印度的总理莫迪会在27、28号在武汉会晤，然后就是这个酒店。
I'm so excited to know that our Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister, is coming here in Wuhan. I'm so happy to know it. I'm so excited to see him.
But this is about more than just optics. It is about repairing a difficult relationship after last year's Doklam standoff. Senior Chinese officials have hinted at why China is now reaching out to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Although India is facing an election in 2019, Beijing appears to be betting on Modi being here to stay.
习近平主席和莫迪总理都是富有战略思维和历史担当的领导人，都受到各自国家民众的广泛的拥戴。
The Trump factor has also forced China's hand, and the threat of a trade war has unnerved Beijing, which doesn't want to be left isolated or for India to be firmly in the US camp.
I think the world is at a turning point right now as we speak. The trade tensions or the trade war between China and the United States presents a very important choice for the rest of the world. China stands for protecting the WTO, and President Donald Trump and the United States seem to be violating major principles of WTO. China stands for free trade and globalization, and the United States seems to be really withdrawing from globalization.
Chinese officials say the idea behind the Wuhan summit was to give them an informal atmosphere to have a wide-ranging conversation without a set agenda and lay the blueprint for the next 100 years to move past Doklam.
以多种形式，多次保持了相互之间的互动。刚才我谈到了，包括相互访问，包括在多边场合的各种形式的会见等等。
Wuhan, the famed city on the Yangtze River, is the home to the Three Gorges Dam. This was chosen as the location after much thought. Xi leaving Beijing to meet a foreign leader is being seen as an unprecedented gesture.
据我们了解，莫迪总理到过中国一些城市，比方说像北京啊，像这个南方中国南方的广东啊。 中国西部的这个西安呢
I think Prime Minister Modi's upcoming visit to Wuhan will be a landmark visit, a very important event between China and India, and we are all very excited about the upcoming visit. And I think the speed and the way the summit meeting has been arranged is really beyond the best expectation.
What is in store as Prime Minister Modi heads to the Yangtze River in Wuhan in central China? This is going to be unprecedented on many levels. 2 days of informal summitry, which China never does, between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi. Informed sources tell India Today that everything is on the table. It is going to be a free-ranging, freewheeling discussion, and the aim is to correct the dangerous slide in relations with ties plummeting last year amid the Doklam standoff. But whether Modi and Xi can reverse the trend still remains to be seen. Reporting for India Today here in Beijing, China, this is Anand Krishnan.
And India Today's Beijing correspondent Anand Krishnan now joins me live from Wuhan. Also with me is India Today's Foreign Affairs editor Geeta Mohan. Defense editor Shiva Arur will join us in just a moment. But Anand, to you first. So Chinese experts say there are great expectations. What are China's expectations from this informal summit, the first of its kind?
Well, Gaurav, it's interesting that both sides seem to be heading into it with slightly different expectations. On the one hand, India has been playing down this summit to some extent, saying don't expect issues to be resolved overnight, don't expect specific outcomes. The Chinese, on the other hand, have been comparing it to the landmark 1988 visit of Rajiv Gandhi. So it's very interesting. And China also seems to be going into it with a global emphasis at a time when it's dealing with Trump, dealing with the trade war, doesn't want to be seen to be isolated. So that's possibly one factor as well behind this very remarkable turnaround and reach out from China just 8 months after Doklam.
8 months after Doklam, and tension remains, Geeta, between India and China. Now, what we are being told by sources in the government is perhaps there wouldn't be any discussion on micro issues. A discussion on Doklam, for example, we are told is not on the agenda. But India-China boundary talks, how do they move forward, especially when there's no laid out agenda, or issues like, you know, Pakistan's support to Maulana Masood Azhar, or stopping his being blocked at the United Nations Security Council, or China blocking us at the nuclear suppliers group. Will there be? Can there be tangible takeaways apart from just sharing the worldview?
Well, Gaurav, when it comes to India and China, we've seen a lot of sticklers, a lot of problems in the recent past. And what Prime Minister Narendra Modi is doing in the penultimate year of his tenure is a political risk in many ways than one. So yes, many in the official circles are saying not trying to hype the entire visit, saying that there aren't going to be real deliverables that you can see in terms of agreements or MOUs, memorandum of understanding, that will be signed, but certainly a way forward. What both the leaders are going to discuss are not specifics. While they're not going to go into specifics and not mention, maybe not have specific conversation over Doklam, but like you rightly pointed out, all the areas of concern that India has in a broader sense of how officials can take those issues forward to resolve the matter, and how, despite and in spite of all the problems that India and China have, how can they really move forward on various important aspects of relations between India and China, are areas that the two leaders are going to focus on. And we have been saying this in the past also, Gaurav, that this is the first time that the Chinese president is hosting a leader in China in an informal setup. So as much as it is important for India, it also is important for China to ensure that the optics are right and the messaging correct.
Okay, the optics and the messaging. So when Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Chinese President Xi Jinping, they will, from what we are being told, will have at least 5 rounds of extensive talks over 2 days, Friday and Saturday. The Prime Minister will be there in a short while from now. The informal summit will have a wide-ranging set of issues that will be discussed, but without a laid-out agenda. But more structured than previous thought, the two sides will also meet with their delegations of at least 6 officers on Friday evening. That is what we are now being told by our sources. They'll be meeting at the sprawling East Lake Guest House, where President Xi is staying. So what we are now being told is 5 to 6 rounds of informal talks, which begin 1 p.m. Indian Standard Time Friday. Then there'll be a one-on-one. There'll be a tour of a provincial museum at Hubei. 6 officials from India, which includes India's National Security Advisor, the Foreign Secretary, some other officials on the China desk. Then there's a dinner at the East Lake Guest House Saturday, and Saturday is extremely crucial, Anant, when there will be a one-on-one, and that happens at 7:30 a.m. Indian Standard Time. Then there's a lunch that's hosted by the Chinese President Xi Jinping. So when all of this is happening, are cameras permitted on that boat ride and on that walk that the two heads of government and state take?
Well, Gaurav, we're being told is there'll be very limited camera access, especially on Saturday, perhaps just for a few minutes when their boat ride and walk begins. Because there's a sense, the same thing that we hear from both Indian and Chinese officials is they feel that given the sensitivity of this relationship, things are best resolved away from the glare of the media, away from the glare of the cameras. So the focus very much on Saturday is going to be one-to-one. Forget cameras, even their own note takers and aides won't be present. On Saturday, it will just be the 2 men and their 2 interpreters. So it's going to be as intimate as both sides want it to be. But the question is, how far is this going to be a meeting of minds on Saturday? Optics is one thing. Whether or not this will lead to some sort of agreement that maybe a few weeks, months down the line will see these issues gradually being addressed, we have to keep a watch and see how that pans out.
Okay, let's also listen in to Gautam Bambavle, India's ambassador to China.
An informal summit between 2 major leaders of the world, this is probably happening for the first time. In the past, we have had experiences where there is a formal visit, there's a formal component of a visit, and then 1 or 2 hours or maybe half a day is spent between the leaders meeting informally. In this particular visit, the entire visit is going to be informal. And when we say it is informal, the main elements of an informal summit, and in this particular informal summit between Prime Minister Mr. Modi and President Mr. Xi Jinping of China, the main elements will be that there is going to be no set agenda for their talks. It is not that there is a long agenda through which the 2 leaders will work through. There will be no set agenda. They will be in a very informal setting, a friendly setting. They will probably have a walk in the park, or they might have a boat ride on the East Lake here in Wuhan. And while they're doing this, they will be discussing various issues between the two of them. So this is what an informal summit is. A third element in an informal summit is that there is no outcome documents in terms of a memorandum of understanding or an agreement which is signed between the two countries.
Geeta, some commentators in Beijing have been quoted saying India needs China's investment, China needs India's market. Both can prosper if they work together. The world will benefit. But can they overcome the roadblocks, the historical roadblocks, the deceit, the stabbing in the back? Both leaders are considered very, very strong in their respective countries.
Well, that's right. Talking about stabbing in the back, Gaurav, every time Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been in China, we have seen skirmishes at the border, and not minor ones. These are major ones that we're talking about, and there have been 3 visits with 3 problems at the border, and it doesn't seem to subside in terms of the kind of tensions that we're seeing between the two countries or have been seeing in the recent past. It doesn't seem to subside anytime soon. Having said that, a lot of officials or people that we've been talking to, Gaurav, say that while there are issues such as Masood Azhar, Pakistan, nuclear suppliers group, all these are areas that need to be worked upon. But the bigger areas, the larger issues, is the trade imbalance between India and China. Now that needs real addressing, because that's where the economic prosperity, or for that matter, the economic strength of India will come from. And that's an area that certainly will be up for talks when the two leaders meet, as to how to move forward in addressing the real issue, the real economic aspects of ties between the two countries. And the whole strategic aspect of India and China ties fall into place when you look at it through the prism of how well India is doing economically, Gaurav.
Oh, absolutely. China needs India's market. India needs China's investment. But what happens to terror? What happens to NSG? These are various issues. And remember, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi invited the Chinese President Xi Jinping to India, to Ahmedabad, remember, similar informal settings. They sat by the Sabarmati River. They were on that jhula. And that is where the Chinese troops came into Chumar. And that was stabbing India in the back. The borders are alert. Will something like this happen there? At the borders, at the India-China border, at the line of actual control? We'll be tracking that story very closely. For the moment, Anant Krishnan and Geeta Mohan, many thanks for joining me. We will track this historic meeting very, very closely. The finest reporters on ground, the finest analysis only here on India Today. I now want to shift focus to the other big story, and that's a message for the entire world and Pakistan to see. It's a major success for security forces in Jammu and Kashmir, in South Kashmir, in Tral. The man you see on your television screen, his name is Mufti Yasir. The other man is a designated terrorist. Maulana Masood Azhar heads a global terrorist organization called Jaish-e-Mohammed. And this terrorist, Mufti Yasir, the top operational commander of Jaish-e-Mohammed, was eliminated. He was neutralized by security forces along with 3 other Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorists in Tral yesterday. Mufti Yasir, as this picture very clearly shows, was very close to the Maulana of terror, Masood Azhar, who lives incidentally in Pakistan and is handled by Pakistan Army and ISI. This was a joint operation that was carried out by the Rashtriya Rifles, the Jammu and Kashmir Police and the Central Reserve Police Force in the Lam forest area of Tral. Very specific intelligence input that came in from the locals, because these Pakistani terrorists also harassed locals. This is the second big blow to Masood Azhar's Jaish-e-Mohammed in Jammu and Kashmir after its earlier chief, Mufti Waqas, was killed by the security forces on the 5th of March. So you're looking at these images very closely. The security forces are eliminating, they're neutralizing the top leadership of Jaish-e-Mohammed, Hizbul Mujahideen, Lashkar-e-Taiba, and other such terrorist organizations that have sprung up in the valley. The aim is to ensure that terrorism is leaderless. The moment there is a new leader, within months he's eliminated. The new crop is just then directionless, rudderless, and the aim is to ensure that local terrorists are weaned away from the gun, brought back, and more than 70 people have been brought back. 70 youngsters have been brought back by the security forces. Some have been shifted to other parts of the country so that they can start afresh. India Today's Shuja ul Haq now joins me with the latest. Shuja, you've been speaking to your sources in the security forces. First, Mufti Waqas, and now this terrorist, Mufti Yasir. What does their killing mean for the terror organization Jaish-e-Mohammed in the valley?
Gaurav, Jaish-e-Mohammed, as we've been reporting, has been very active in the valley for last couple of months. In fact, many suicide attacks, saline attacks have been carried out by Jaish. The security agencies have been believing that there is an increased effort being made from across the line of control to push more Jaish, cadres and increase their activity on the ground. But that's the reason why they've also sent across some very important figures. Like you were mentioning earlier, it was Mufti Waqas, and now this man, Mufti Yasir, who has been killed in Tral. This really tells you the magnitude in which they have launched their activities across on this side of the line of control.
Okay. Keep tracking that story, Shuja. I will come back to you for more. The message is very clear from the security forces. Terrorist leadership will be eliminated first. The heartening thing, the intelligence inputs are coming in from the locals themselves. That is all I have for you on this special broadcast of India First. Many thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching the video. For more such news and updates, please like, share and subscribe to India Today. Also check out our other great videos from our channel. We know you would love to.